30 minutes past midnight, one September night in 1983, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov looked up at the computer monitors inside his glass-walled offices at a Soviet early warning station in Moscow. And on that computer monitor, he saw the apocalypse approaching. From 15 kilometers above the Earth, the Soviet Union's OCO satellites had detected 5 incoming Minuteman ballistic missiles, each armed with a 335 kiloton warhead. That's almost 20 times more destructive than the bomb which fell on Hiroshima. Lieutenant Colonel Petrov's monitor allowed him one and only one choice. He could find OCO's satellite warning true and thus unleash a retaliatory strike before the Soviet Union's own command and control facilities were wiped out. Or he could declare it false, risking the annihilation of his own nation. True, false. The spoiler, of course, is that the human race still exists, which tells you what Petrov chose that day. As Indians contemplate the bizarre story of the malfunctioning cruise missile fired at the obscure Pakistani town of Mian Channu, the learnings from Lieutenant Colonel Petrov's story helps understand what the stakes really are. General George Lee Butler, who commanded the United States Strategic Air Command in 1991-1992, saw enough to convert him to a nuclear disarmament advocate. What did he see? I quote, "Missiles that blew up in their silos and ejected their nuclear warheads outside the confines of the silo. B-52 aircraft that collided with tankers and scattered nuclear weapons across the coast. In one B-52 crash, 6 out of 7 safety devices preventing an accidental nuclear explosion were disabled. 6 out of 7. The story sold by nuclear weapons establishments across the world is that their missiles and the missiles' warheads are safely chained to highly secure, fault-resistant systems. The truth is, everywhere in the world, these are just machines operated by human beings. Neither machines nor human beings are fail-safe. In 2016, a state-of-the-art Swing-Feng 3 missile accidentally fired from the Taiwanese patrol boat Jianchang while she was at dock in Zheoyang slammed into a fishing boat, killing 3 crew. The missile's radar-guided target detection system, it emerged, likely led it to home in on the fishing boat, mistaking it for a military target. Last year, spectacular footage emerged of a Russian Caliber missile, now being widely used in Ukraine, malfunctioning after its launch from the destroyer Marshal Shaposhnikov, performing firewheel-like cartwheels before finally impacting right next to the ship. And in 2020, 19 Iranian soldiers were killed in a live-fire exercise when a C-802 Noor missile accidentally hit the support ship Konarak, which was placing targets for the fleet. Each of these incidents could have had truly disastrous outcomes. Imagine, for example, the Taiwanese missile hitting a People's Liberation Army naval ship in the contested waters of Penghu, or the Iranian Noor missile killing United States military personnel. From the Cold War, we know that the world actually came quite close to these scenarios more than once. In November 1979, United States early warning systems detected first 200, then 2,200 incoming Soviet warheads. The United States National Security Advisor prepared to call his president for authorization to respond when the mysterious missiles suddenly disappeared from computer screens. Later on, it turned out that a technician had inserted a training tape to impress a visiting VIP into the wrong computer. The world's fate, the scholar Jonathan Granoff has noted in an essay on nuclear near disasters, hung in the balance of but a few people and a few minutes. Events like these weren't actually outliers. In 1980, United States nuclear forces were mobilized for counterattack because of first strike warnings generated by a malfunctioning chip. In 1995, a Soviet early warning system mistook a weather satellite for a nuclear device. Then Russian President Boris Yeltsin later admitted he used his nuclear football, the real-time communication device used in a crisis. And in February 2009, the United Kingdom's Vanguard and the French Le Triomphant Both carrying nuclear weapons collided in the Atlantic because officials later said they were, I quote, unable to see each other. Even the best resource systems in the world do not guarantee against such errors. In 2003, half of all United States Air Force units responsible for nuclear weapons failed security and safety inspections, despite having been notified in advance of the checks. 4 years after that, nuclear-armed cruise missiles were accidentally loaded onto a B-52 bomber because of crew protocol errors. To some experts, like the scholar Bruno Tertre, near misses are evidence that the nuclear weapons system works. On each of these occasions, after all, protocol and logic did prevail. The problem is the fact that the system worked in preventing these mishaps doesn't guarantee it will work in all future mishaps. With nuclear weapons, one bad outcome is unacceptable for both the sides. Exactly what went wrong with the missile that hit Mian Channu, we do not know. The missile might or might not have misfired during a test. It might or might not have been carried under a combat jet, which is among the few circumstances where a single individual can authorize launch. It might or might not even have been a BrahMos missile, which might or might not be currently equipped with nuclear warheads. And in critical senses, these questions, which have obsessed the media, are not really the important ones. In normal circumstances, there's little chance that India and Pakistan will launch missiles just because their systems detect an incoming strike. It just takes a couple of minutes, which doesn't give planners a lot of time for one thing. Likely, either side would absorb a first strike or seek to preempt the other side by striking first, but with its massed resources, not with one missile. Little imagination is needed though to see that in other circumstances, like a military standoff, ongoing airstrikes, even a large-scale mishap that causes deaths, that things might go somewhat differently. Islamabad reacted to the Mian Channu incident with admirable calm. In other circumstances, either it or New Delhi might act very differently. Moreover, the risks are growing. As both sides work on improving their defenses against the other's nuclear arsenal, scholars Christopher Clary and Vipin Narang have pointed out, the temptation to wipe out the other by hitting first increases. India's weapons, they state, are, and I quote, now kept at a high state of readiness, capable of being operationalized and released within seconds or minutes. Well, that was familiar during the Cold War. President Ronald Reagan, no dove, put it thus once, I quote, 6 minutes to decide how to respond to a blip on a radar scope and decide whether to unleash Armageddon. How could anyone apply reason at a time like that? The benefits of nuclear deterrence are well established and ought not to be casually dismissed. The period since 1945 has been historically exceptional, scholars like Kenneth Waltz have taught us, in not having seen a war between the major powers. Nuclear weapons were among the reasons India and Pakistan stepped away from full-scale war in 1999, 2001, 2002 and 2019. Yet there's plenty that can still be done to increase resilience against the prospect of ending up at war because of missteps, miscalculations or mishaps. The models for India-Pakistan protocols to mitigate nuclear war risks exist. In 1971, the United States and Soviet Union, for example, signed a treaty committing both sides to measures against mishaps. There were treaties restricting how many missiles both sides could have and where they could be deployed. There were verification regimes to make sure neither side could cheat. Nuclear deterrence did keep the peace, but deterrence in turn was sustained by a deep superpower engagement on strategic arms limitation. Islamabad and New Delhi must engage in the granular, meaningful conversation needed to learn from Mian Channu and apply its lessons to their nuclear weapons contexts. In 1983, Lieutenant Colonel Petrov called the strike warning false. Investigators later found that the early warning system had buggy code, which mistook sunlight bouncing off clouds for incoming missiles. Petrov saved our world. He is one of the heroes of our age. It isn't hard to see, though, how easily he could have called it wrong. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint.